Hey guys, tonight we wander together through Cairo's forgotten veins, the narrow alleyways that crisscross like veins beneath the city's neon glow and ancient breath. You stand beneath a weak lantern that flickers in the night breeze, its rusty chain rattling like an old man's cough. The shadows it casts stretch long and spindly against cracked plaster walls, hinting at doorways you're not sure are truly there. The air smells of dust, cumin, and something faintly metallic, like forgotten coins left in a pouch. Already, the city presses close. Cairo never sleeps. But here, in these dim passages, it feels like it dreams, and you're inside it. You probably won't survive this little detour, by the way. The cobblestones look ready to break your ankle, and the stray cats perched on broken windowsills give you the kind of stare that says, "We'll eat you if you collapse." Comforting, right? Still, this is the price of chasing history into the cracks of a city that outlived empires. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you are right now, and what time it is where you live. I like to imagine these alleyways stretching all the way to your street. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the alley. The stones feel uneven beneath your feet, their surfaces rubbed smooth by centuries of sandals, leather shoes, and perhaps the hooves of mules hauling dates and pottery. Cairo hides its treasures not in golden palaces, but in these half-forgotten corridors. Here, mosques too small for guidebooks whisper through cracked tiles and silent courtyards. A lantern's glow reveals a carved wooden lintel above a door, its Arabic calligraphy fading but still legible if you lean close. The phrase asterisk, Bismillahir-Rahman-Ir-Rahim asterisk curls across the grain of the wood, worn soft by fingertips that traced it hundreds of years ago. Historians still argue whether this doorway belonged to a prayer hall, a family's private masjid, or just a charitable annex. What's clear is that people passed beneath it believing they stepped into sacred space. A gust of night air carries the faint, spicy tang of grilled lamb from a vendor nearby. It's jarringly modern, reminding you that life goes on outside these alleys. And yet, here, the silence feels layered, like peeling wallpaper. The first layer, the present hum of scooters sputtering in distant streets. Beneath it, echoes of merchants who once shouted prices for indigo cloth. Beneath that, the near-invisible hush of worshippers bowing in lines you can almost see, their shadows bending as one. A cat darts past you, tail upright as though guiding you towards something. You follow, partly because you're curious, partly because you're clearly not the one in charge here. It slips into a courtyard barely wider than your outstretched arms. Broken stone benches line the walls, and in the center stands a dry fountain. Its basin is cracked, but faint blue tiles still cling to the sides, glimmering under lantern light. Some are star-shaped, others geometric, all pointing inwards toward a center that no longer holds water. You pause. This was once an ablution fountain. Men would wash their hands, feet, and faces here before prayer, splashing cool water under Cairo's burning sun. The mosque itself must be nearby, though all that remains now are collapsed arches and a jagged wall. The Qibla direction, faintly marked in stone, still points you toward Mecca, steady as the desert stars above. A whispered legend stirs in your mind, the kind you only hear from old storytellers smoking shisha outside cafes. They say that in alleys like this, angels sometimes linger, guarding mosques too forgotten for human prayers. Some claim you can feel it in the shiver along your arm, in the way your breath slows for no reason. Superstition? Maybe. But then again, even cats pause here and seem to bow their heads, as if remembering something you've long forgotten. You crouch near the fountain, brushing away dust with your fingers. Underneath lies a chipped tile bearing a faded inscription, asterisk al-Masjid al-Saghir, the small mosque. It's so simple, so unassuming, that you almost laugh. Imagine centuries of devotion, and all it's remembered as is asterisk the small one asterisk. There's poetry in that though. The biggest acts of faith sometimes happen in the quietest corners. A faint creak makes you look up. A shutter swings open above, revealing the lined face of an elderly man. He stares down at you like you've interrupted something ancient, then closes the wood without a word. You're left wondering if he saw you, or if he simply shuts that window every night out of habit. Cairo thrives on such ambiguity, and as you stand to leave the fountain behind, you realize the alley is darker now, the lanterns fewer. The air thickens with the musk of history and the sharp tang of old stone. You keep walking, your shadow elongated on walls painted in peeling layers of ochre and turquoise. Each step pulls you further into the city's memory, where forgotten mosques hide not out of shame but out of patience, waiting for curious wanderers to stumble back into their company. The path narrows so tightly that your shoulders nearly scrape the walls. The stones here are colder, rougher, and you swear you hear faint murmurs echoing, though no one follows you. Is it the alley speaking? Or perhaps prayers long abandoned woven into the mortar? For a heartbeat, you close your eyes. The lantern sputters above, and the alley becomes a black canvas filled only with breath and heartbeat. When you open them again, the path has widened into another courtyard, and the promise of more mosques, hidden, crumbling, waiting, pulls you forward. You leave behind the narrow courtyard of *al-Masjid al-Saghir*, the small mosque, and drift further down a winding lane. The lanterns here grow sparser, and the air feels older, as if every breath you take has passed through centuries before reaching your lungs. You stumble on uneven cobbles, muttering a soft curse under your breath, then quickly apologize to no one in particular, because you never know if angels, jinn, or just judgmental alley cats are listening in Cairo at night. The alley opens into a broader street, though broad is relative. It could barely fit a donkey cart. To your left rises a ruin that at first looks like nothing but a pile of sand-colored stone. But as your eyes adjust, you notice arches, faded inscriptions, and half-buried steps. You are standing at the edge of Fustat, the very first capital of Islamic Egypt, founded in 641 CE by Amr ibn al-As. Historians still argue whether this precise spot belonged to the * mosque of Amr ibn al-As *, or one of its smaller satellite prayer houses. But either way, the stones radiate that strange hum of first beginnings. Imagine it. The very first Muslims in Egypt gathering here, fresh from conquest and change, standing in rows with the desert wind carrying their voices. No domes yet, no minarets, no grand marble, just raw earth, palm trunks, and woven mats. You smile at the thought. Cairo, with all its layered chaos, began in simplicity. And ironically, you're now staring at simplicity again, a ruin nearly erased, returning to dust. You crouch beside a toppled column. Its surface is rough, flecked with what might have been painted once. Local kids probably use it now as a place to sit while eating sunflower seeds. Cairo has always had this casual relationship with history. Yesterday's sacred marble becomes tomorrow's street furniture. Honestly, you kind of respect that. It's practical. Try hauling a 1,000-year-old block just to preserve it in a museum. You'd give up after 5 minutes and let it be someone's bench too. A quirky legend circles your mind, one you overheard at a tea stall. Old men swear that a pearl was once embedded in the mihrab of the Mosque of Amr, glowing faintly at night. They say it vanished during one of Cairo's many fires, possibly swallowed by ash, possibly stolen by a wandering trader. And of course, some claim it fell into the Nile and still lies there, waiting to blind the fishermen foolish enough to find it. It sounds absurd, but then again, Cairo thrives on absurdity. Remember that cursed pearl in Basra we joked about? Same energy. Maybe history just likes hiding shiny things to keep us entertained. You trace the outlines of another inscription half buried in plaster. The calligraphy curls upward, praising Allah's mercy. But the words break off mid-sentence, as if the stonecutter got distracted. Maybe his chisel broke, or maybe a pigeon flew overhead and made him reconsider life choices. Scholars have noticed this unfinished inscription too. Some argue it proves the mosque was built hastily after the conquest. Others suggest it hints at repairs left undone. No one agrees, of course. Cairo is allergic to tidy answers. As you step further into the ruin, the air cools. A half roof still stands, its beams creaking like tired bones. From here, you can almost picture rows of worshippers shoulder to shoulder, murmuring prayers under the burning Egyptian sun. You try to imagine their sandals scuffing the same stones your sneakers rest on. It's humbling, until you realize your sneakers squeak loudly in the silence, and you wonder if the ghosts of Fustat are rolling their eyes. You find a niche in the wall blackened from soot. Perhaps lamps once hung here, dripping oil casting golden light. Or perhaps fire once swept through, leaving scars that refuse to fade. You reach out, touch the cool stone, and for a moment you feel as if you're part of the ruin's memory. But just as quickly, a scooter backfires somewhere beyond the alley, shattering the spell. Cairo has no patience for sentimentality. It'll drag you back to the present, whether you like it or not. A sudden flutter of wings startles you. Dozens of pigeons burst from a hole in the ceiling, their feathers raining dust on your head. You cough, wave the air clear, and mutter, "Great, now I have divine pigeon blessings." The cats from earlier would probably disagree, but hey, you'll take what you can get. You keep walking, past cracked columns and sunken floors, until you find yourself facing a wall patched together with mismatched stones. Some are smooth marble, others jagged brick. It looks like a child's desperate attempt at Lego. Scholars often debate whether this mosaic construction came from recycling older Roman buildings or just whatever happened to be lying around. Honestly, it feels very Cairo. Nothing is wasted. Everything is folded back into the living city. You pause at the edge of the ruin, lantern light casting shadows long enough to make the columns look like standing figures. For a second, it feels like the first congregation has returned, silent and watchful, waiting for you to take your place in line. You nearly do. Then laugh at yourself, because that would make you the weirdo bowing in an empty ruin while a stray cat judges you from the wall. Still, as you leave the site of Old Fustat, you can't shake the sensation that the prayers never fully left. They hover in the dust, in the stone, in the faint hum of wind against broken arches. And whether it's history or imagination, it feels real enough to keep you company as you step back into the alley. The alley winds like a snake, narrowing again until your shoulders nearly scrape the walls. You push past dangling laundry, shirts and trousers flapping like restless ghosts, and suddenly, the lane spills you into an open courtyard. Here, time feels heavier, denser, like incense that's been smoldering for centuries. Rising above you, bold against the night sky, is the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. Not the polished postcard view, of course. You're not in the tourist entrance. You've stumbled into a forgotten flank of it, the kind of back corner that tour groups never reach. Broken bricks crumble under your shoes, and weeds sprout in the cracks of the great outer wall. Still, the structure looms massive, a reminder that Ahmad ibn Tulun, the Abbasid governor who built it in the 9th century, had no interest in small gestures. He wanted permanence. Your eyes climb the spiraling minaret, its corkscrew design unlike anything else in Cairo. It juts against the night sky, twisting upward like a staircase to nowhere. Historians still argue whether Ibn Tulun's minaret was inspired by the Great Mosque of Samarra in Iraq or if it was a wild invention of its own. Either way, it looks less like an Islamic symbol and more like a giant drill boring into the heavens. You tilt your head back too far and nearly lose your balance, stumbling over a loose brick. Smooth move. If anyone's watching from the shadows, they probably think you're doing slapstick comedy in a 1,000-year-old ruin. But maybe that's appropriate. The mosque has seen centuries of rulers rise and fall. A clumsy tourist is small potatoes. The courtyard is vast, wide enough to swallow an entire caravan. The night air hangs still, yet you can almost hear the ghost of Friday prayers. Thousands of voices booming in unison, the imam's words carrying under the sky. You run your hand along the arcade pillars, stone cool to the touch, worn smooth where hands leaned for centuries. The pillars seem endless, stretching in quiet symmetry, leading your eyes toward the central fountain, and then comes the whisper. Not a voice you can pin down, more like a ripple of sound curling through the colonnade. Local legend insists Ibn Tulun himself wanders the mosque some nights, checking on his legacy. Others say the minaret is hollow, and if you press your ear against it, you can hear the hum of angels' wings. A third tale claims that once every 100 years someone climbs the spiral and finds the top door opening to a hidden chamber filled with manuscripts no one alive remembers. You glance at the corkscrew minaret again, narrowing your eyes, half expecting the top to glow. It doesn't. Disappointing. Still, there's an odd comfort here. Unlike the fragile ruins of Fustat, Ibn Tulun's mosque feels alive, stubbornly intact. It has survived fires, invasions, earthquakes, neglect, and restoration. It's the grumpy elder of Cairo's mosques, weathered but unbowed. You find yourself muttering, "Respect, old man," under your breath as if the building needs your approval. A small wooden door catches your eye, its paint peeling in curls. You push it, and it creaks open, revealing a side chamber. Inside, the air is cooler, tinged with the faint scent of dust and pigeons. Light filters through a high lattice, scattering geometric patterns across the floor. The chamber was once a madrasa hall, where scholars debated law and theology. You can almost hear the echo of arguments bouncing off the walls, heated discussions about faith, politics, the role of reason. Historians still argue whether the Tulunid scholars were innovators or merely imitators of Baghdad's intellectual scene. Either way, their words linger in the silence, a reminder that ideas can be as enduring as stone. You sit for a moment on the cool floor, tracing patterns of dust with your fingertip. For once, the silence is complete. No scooters, no vendors, no backfiring engines, just you, the chamber, and the faint hum of centuries. And yet, even here, humor sneaks in. A pigeon above chooses this exact moment to relieve itself, missing you by a hair's breadth. Sacred silence ruined. You laugh softly, the sound echoing louder than you expect. Maybe the chamber approves of your levity. Leaving the chamber, you step back into the courtyard. Moonlight splashes across the arches, silvering the stone. The minaret looms again, impossible to ignore. You imagine climbing its spiral staircase at night, each step creaking underfoot, the air thinning as you rise higher, until the whole of Cairo spreads below like a lantern-lit map. A foolish part of you wonders, if you reached the top and shouted, would the city answer back? Or would only pigeons flap in disapproval? The thought lingers as you leave Ibn Tulun's shadow behind, back into the web of alleys. The spiral fades into the dark sky, and you wonder what other mosques hide just beyond the next turn, smaller, forgotten, waiting to be stumbled upon. The city seems to whisper, asterisk, keep walking. You continue weaving through the alleyways, the sound of your footsteps muffled by the thick layer of sand and dust coating every stone. Cairo at night smells of cumin, grilled meat, and a faint trace of musk. An invisible trail left by a city that has lived longer than most empires. The alley bends sharply, revealing a sunken courtyard barely visible from the street above. Here, the real magic begins. The courtyard of the cats of Al-Azhar. Stray cats prowl this sacred corner as if they are the mosque's unofficial guardians. Their eyes glint in the dim lantern light, reflecting green, gold, and the occasional orange. One arches its back and gives a soft hiss as if asking you, politely but firmly, "Do you know where you are?" You feel oddly intimidated by the feline sentinels. Remember, this is Cairo. The cats might outlive you, and honestly, probably will. The courtyard once belonged to a small annex of Al-Azhar University, the heart of Islamic learning founded in 970 CE. Scholars pored over texts here, debating theology, logic, and poetry. Historians still argue whether some of the debates in these very walls influenced wider Islamic jurisprudence, or if the young students simply argued over whose ink had smudged first. Either way, the spirit of learning lingers, mingling with the fur and the scent of the alley. A cat leaps gracefully onto a crumbling stone bench, tail flicking, and watches you curiously. The lore of these courtyards includes a story that each cat carries a soul of a scholar who spent too much time studying and forgot to leave. Some locals swear that if a cat brushes past you 3 times, you will dream of ancient wisdom that no living person remembers. You pause, thinking you've been brushed twice already. The 3rd time is coming. The benches themselves are worn and chipped, their surfaces etched with centuries of initials, prayers, and doodles. Wooden minbars once stood here, intricately carved with geometric patterns and Arabic calligraphy, now reduced to fragments scattered across the courtyard. Dust settles over the carvings, as if the universe itself insists these stories remain silent. You run your fingers along one chipped pattern and feel an odd warmth, as if someone or something had recently touched it. Perhaps it's just imagination, or perhaps it's the cats approving of your curiosity. A faint smell of incense drifts from a broken niche in the wall. Oud, sandalwood, and a hint of rose mingle with the night air. You inhale deeply, letting the scent anchor you in this moment. Islamic tradition holds that mosques often carry subtle fragrances intentionally, as scent enhances spiritual presence. But here, it is accidental, an unintended relic of centuries of prayer and devotion. Even the alleys participate in worship. As you explore the edges of the courtyard, you notice a tiny alcove partially hidden by a pile of broken tiles. Here, old madrasa manuscripts were once stored. Scholars debated here for hours, seated cross-legged, quills scratching, voices rising and falling like gentle waves. The floor is covered with sand now, but the air vibrates faintly with the memory of words exchanged centuries ago. A legend suggests that reading the dust of these floors can impart flashes of forgotten knowledge, but only to the patient, and preferably someone who doesn't sneeze. A playful breeze stirs the cats into a frenzy. They chase one another across fallen columns and broken stone, tails high. You laugh quietly. In these alleyways, even the sacred and the mundane share space effortlessly. You imagine a young student centuries ago, scribbling notes in this courtyard, pausing only to shoo a cat away, or maybe to argue about whether the feline's jump was an omen of divine favor. You crouch near the center fountain, dry now and cracked, its basin lined with faded blue tiles forming delicate floral patterns. Children's chalk marks adorn the edges, prayers scrawled in playful handwriting, tracing a line between past devotion and present curiosity. You kneel and run a fingertip over one faded line, asterisk, La ilaha illallah. Even in the simplicity, the words feel weighty, as if centuries of whispered repetition have built invisible walls of devotion around you. Night deepens. The lanterns flicker, shadows twisting like ink in water. Somewhere in the distance, a faint asterisk meow asterisk pierces the silence. One cat sits atop a toppled column, tail curled, observing you like a small caliph ruling over his tiny sacred realm. You realize the cats, the stones, the faded tiles, they are all part of the same narrative, patiently waiting for visitors like you to witness their quiet endurance. You rise, dusting sand from your knees, and continue down the alley, leaving behind the feline guardians. The next mosque is hidden somewhere beyond the curve, its story layered with dust, legend, and prayer. And as you move, the soft echo of tiny paws on stone seems to follow you, a subtle reminder that even in forgotten corners, life persists, sacred and absurd all at once. You leave the courtyard of Al-Azhar's cats behind, stepping carefully over cobbles worn smooth by centuries of feet, both human and animal. Your eyes catch glimpses of wooden pulpits half buried beneath debris. These are the minbars, once proud pulpits from which imams delivered sermons to rows of worshippers. Now they lie scattered, fractured. The carvings faint but still legible, speaking of devotion and artistry long ignored. Dust coats everything, as if the centuries themselves have exhaled a layer of memory over the mosque. You run your hand across one of the remaining panels, feeling the grooves of Arabic calligraphy. There's a story hidden in each line, verses chosen carefully, carved meticulously into wood that has resisted time. The minbar would have been a focal point in any congregation, a pulpit of guidance and inspiration. Historians still argue whether certain designs were symbolic of local dynasties or simply aesthetic preferences of artisans. Either way, the artistry carries the weight of tradition. You kneel beside one of the toppled pulpits, brushing dust away. Beneath it, something shiny catches your eye, a tiny inlaid gemstone almost invisible. Locals tell a peculiar tale. In forgotten mosques, one may find remnants of wealth concealed intentionally, hidden during periods of strife or looting. Some whisper that the gems are protective talismans, blessed subtly by prayers over generations. It's probably superstition, but your fingers hesitate hovering above it, hesitant to disturb centuries of silence. The scent of ancient wood mingles with the faint aroma of incense that once burned endlessly in these halls. Imagine the congregation kneeling, swaying in unison, voices lifting an asterisk takbir asterisk, eyes raised to the mihrab. You hear the faint hum of their chants in your mind, though the echo might just be your imagination. Yet somehow, it feels almost real. There's a pulse to this place, subtle, patient, as if the mosque itself remembers every word uttered beneath its arches. A narrow shaft of moonlight cuts through a hole in the roof, illuminating a delicate geometric pattern carved into the remaining frame. The precision is breathtaking. Every angle, curve, and line perfectly balanced. Scholars debate whether such designs were purely decorative or held mystical significance. Some claim patterns like this encode knowledge of the universe itself, hidden in plain sight. while others shrug and call it ornamentation. Either way, you can't help but marvel at the skill. You stand, brushing sand from your knees, and notice a faint scratch on the wall. A previous visitor or a student must have left it there centuries ago, though time has softened the edges. Curiously, nearby stones have inscriptions worn down to nearly invisible lines. Some believe these marks contain secret prayers or talismans, protective phrases meant to shield the faithful. Fringe legends claim that reciting them aloud in the correct sequence can awaken hidden blessings in the mosque. You laugh softly at the thought, partly because it sounds silly, partly because, well, nothing about Cairo is ever entirely serious. The air here is still, the kind of stillness that makes you hyper-aware of every creak and whisper. You spot a collapsed arch, stones strewn like a miniature mountain. Pigeons settle atop the rubble, cooing softly. Their presence adds a strange liveliness to the ruins, reminding you that life continues even in places left behind by humans. You step lightly over the rubble, careful not to disturb the fragile equilibrium of stone, dust, and feather. Walking further, you notice the faded outline of a door frame, its top carved with intricate floral designs. The doorway once led to a private prayer chamber, accessible only to select worshippers. Tales say that devout souls who entered were blessed with a moment of clarity, a fleeting vision of divine presence. Whether true or just myth, it adds a layer of magic to this forgotten mosque, a subtle whisper that faith lingers even when the walls crumble. You crouch for a moment, eyes tracing the grooves of a carved verse. Indeed, Allah is with those who are patient. The phrase, though centuries old, feels immediate. It reminds you that devotion is not measured in grandeur, but in persistence and humility. A cat slinks past, brushing your ankle. You pause, startled, then smile. Another silent guardian approving your presence. Rising, you step toward a small window high in the remaining wall. Through it, the alley outside is faintly illuminated by lanterns swaying in the night breeze. You imagine traders of old, carrying incense, spices, and stories along these streets. The mosque, though now quiet and fragmented, has absorbed countless footsteps, prayers, and lives. Its memory hangs like a soft echo in the cool night air, waiting for wanderers brave or foolish enough to notice. You take one last look at the minbars, fragments, and scattered carvings. They are remnants of devotion, artistic skill, and history layered so thickly that even time hesitates to erase them completely. As you continue down the alley, the mosque's presence lingers behind you like a gentle pulse, reminding you that even forgotten places can leave an indelible mark on those who take the time to see them. The alley narrows again, winding like a ribbon toward a faint glimmer of light. You pause, inhaling deeply, and immediately notice the scent, a rich, lingering trace of oud and frankincense. The fragrance is subtle, layered over centuries of dust, stone, and the occasional hint of street food from nearby vendors. It's the kind of smell that makes your nostrils flare, both grounding you and teasing a sense of something ancient and sacred. You step cautiously toward a side chamber, the walls cracked but still bearing delicate stucco patterns. The hall feels intimate, a stark contrast to the open courtyards of Ibn Tulun or Fustat. Here, the air seems to hum, as if it holds echoes of whispered prayers. Historians still argue whether these smaller prayer halls were constructed for private devotion or to accommodate overflow from main congregations. Either way, the experience is quiet and profound. A playful breeze slips through the broken lattice windows, stirring faint particles of dust that catch the lantern light like tiny stars. Local legend insists that in forgotten mosques such as this, the air retains memory. Moments of devotion, sighs of students, even murmurs of merchants praying hurriedly before continuing their rounds. Some fringe stories go further, claiming that inhaling this air at midnight can bring fleeting visions of long-past imams. You chuckle softly, realizing you're probably the only person here hoping the legend is true. The floor beneath your feet is uneven, layered with centuries of sand and fragments of tile. You notice a small puddle of what looks like rainwater, though it might be dew or some persistent leak from above. In it, the reflection of the broken ceiling shimmers. The geometry of the lattice windows casts fractured, shifting shadows that dance across the walls. The effect is hypnotic, almost trance-inducing, reminding you how Islamic architecture often plays with light to evoke a sense of the divine. You pause by a partially intact wall, brushing away dust to reveal a faintly painted Arabic verse. Its edges have faded, yet you can still make out the letters. It reads, "O Allah, guide us through the paths of patience and mercy." You can almost hear centuries of soft repetition in the quiet, the cadence of voices rising and falling in prayer. The effect is calming, like the soft, steady rhythm of a river carving its path through stone. A shadow flickers across the far corner, and for a moment you think it's a stray cat. But then the figure solidifies, a small bird, probably a sparrow, hopping between broken tiles. Locals claim that birds who enter abandoned mosques become temporary guardians, carrying the prayers of the faithful in their wings. Fringe legend says that if you whisper a wish near a bird in a sacred space, it may carry it to the heavens. You grin at the absurdity and mutter, "Well, here goes nothing." Your eyes wander upward to the lattice window again. The patterns are intricate, almost impossibly so, weaving geometric shapes into floral motifs. Scholars debate whether such designs encode mathematical knowledge or if they're purely aesthetic, a testament to the artisan's skill. You trace the lines with your finger, feeling the raised carvings, and for a moment, imagine yourself as a student centuries ago, learning under candlelight, your fingers tracing the same patterns while memorizing scripture. A faint creaking interrupts your thoughts. You look up to see a fragment of the ceiling shifting slightly, probably loosened by time. Instinctively, you step back, realizing the mosque has a way of reminding visitors that while it preserves memory, it is still subject to gravity, decay, and the whims of nature. Yet there's a strange beauty in this impermanence. It's honest, unpolished, and entirely human. You move toward the back of the chamber, where a low niche once served as a place for quiet reflection or small gatherings. The shadows here are deeper, almost comforting. You lean against the wall and close your eyes for a heartbeat, listening to the soft whistle of the wind through cracks in the roof. The mosque breathes around you, inhaling and exhaling centuries of devotion. Finally, you rise, brushing sand from your knees. The scents, the shadows, and the subtle hum of history linger in your senses. The alley outside seems a little brighter now, though only slightly, as if the mosque has gifted you a fragment of its calm, a fleeting echo of centuries of prayers carried on fragrant night air. You step out of the cool prayer chamber, the lingering scent of oud and incense clinging to your clothes like a gentle reminder that you are still within the mosque's embrace. The alleyway narrows again, almost claustrophobic, its walls leaning in as if sharing secrets. Ahead, a faded green door catches your eye. Its paint peels in curling strips, and the wood beneath is scarred with the passage of time. The locals call it asterisk, the locked green door, asterisk, a portal to stories that have outlived memory. Legends say the door leads to a side mosque, sealed centuries ago by a saint who feared his teachings might be misunderstood. Some claim that if you press your ear against it at night, you can hear faint recitations of forgotten surahs. Fringe beliefs suggest that those who listen too long might catch glimpses of the saint's spirit, wandering behind the walls. You grin nervously. This is Cairo, after all, never short on mystical surprises. Historians debate whether these side mosques were intentionally sealed to protect sacred knowledge or merely abandoned because the community shifted elsewhere. Either explanation feels plausible as you trace your fingers along the flaking wood, imagining the hands of faithful worshippers who once entered here daily. The weight of devotion embedded in the door's fibers is tangible, even as it resists your curiosity. A stray cat jumps onto the threshold, tail flicking like a tiny conductor directing the night symphony. You hesitate, half expecting it to speak in riddles. The creature peers at you with wide eyes before turning and disappearing into the shadows beyond. You laugh softly. Cairo's secret guardians are everywhere if you know how to notice them. Through the cracks in the door, faint slivers of light reach your feet, dancing across the dust-strewn floor. You imagine the side mosque once hosting small congregations, intimate enough that the imam's whispers were audible to all. The carved arches, now mostly crumbled, once framed worshippers in delicate patterns, channeling both light and devotion. You bend to examine a fragment of a mihrab peeking through the gaps. Its painted details are nearly gone, yet the direction toward Mecca remains unmistakable, a subtle, enduring guide. The alley smells faintly of damp stone and wild jasmine, carried from some hidden garden nearby. You take a deep breath, letting the scents mingle with the faint incense still clinging to your senses. Ancient builders often designed mosques to harmonize with natural fragrances, believing that pleasant aromas uplifted both the body and the soul. You can almost feel the same effect now, a quiet elevation in your chest, as if the air itself is steeped in centuries of prayer. A loose hinge creaks under your touch, and the door shifts slightly, revealing a narrow gap. You peer through, imagining an empty hall bathed in moonlight. The shadows of broken columns stretch across the floor like fingers reaching for forgotten knowledge. Fringe tales claim that wandering through this hall at midnight allows one to hear the prayers of long-dead worshippers, echoing softly in perfect harmony. You shake your head with a smile. You'll settle for the stories instead. Above the doorway, a faint inscription in Arabic curves across the lintel. Patience and devotion preserve even the unseen. You trace the letters with your finger, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath. It's humbling, this reminder that faith exists beyond sight, beyond walls, beyond the decay of time. Even sealed, forgotten spaces retain their spiritual essence. You step back from the door, letting it rest in its mystery. Some things are meant to remain locked, the stories inside preserved for those patient enough, or perhaps brave enough, to witness them in their own time. The alley around you feels softer, almost protective, and you continue down its winding path, carrying the sense that some secrets are best appreciated from a respectful distance. The night grows deeper, and the quiet hum of the city beyond the alley fades. All that remains is the locked green door, the whisper of legends and your own heartbeat as you move forward, drawn onward by the promise of hidden mosques yet to reveal themselves. The alley bends once more, narrowing into a passage so tight that the walls on either side seem to lean toward you, as if sharing a secret. A faint glow ahead suggests another courtyard, but this one feels different, ancient and bustling at once, even in its emptiness. You step into the space where merchants once paused between trades, where caravans unloaded spices, silks, and stories, and where prayers wove quietly between the chaos. This is the courtyard of caravanserai prayers. The air here is thick with history. Imagine the merchants, weary from desert roads, riding camels laden with goods from the Levant or Nubia, faces streaked with sun and dust. They would stop here to pray, bowing in unison, murmuring Subhana Rabbiyal Azim under the scorching Egyptian sun. Historians still argue whether these small courtyards were constructed explicitly to accommodate travelers' prayers or simply repurposed from storage spaces. Either explanation seems plausible. Both fit Cairo's way of making every space multifunctional. A stray wind brushes past, carrying a faint spice scent that lingers like a memory of long-gone merchants. Fringe tales insist that if you inhale deeply, you can glimpse the ghosts of travelers kneeling in prayer, their lips moving silently, their hands pressed against cool stone. You half smile, wondering if you might catch one of these fleeting images, or just sneeze from the centuries-old dust. The ground is uneven here, stones worn smooth by countless feet, wheels, and hooves. You step carefully, noticing the faint imprint of a camel's hoof embedded in the dirt. Someone, centuries ago, must have paused precisely here, balancing on sandbags, unrolling a prayer mat before continuing their journey. Even now, the stone seems to hum with that residual energy, a small miracle of continuity. You crouch beside a broken archway framing the entrance to a smaller prayer room. Tiny fragments of blue and white tile still cling to the walls, forming geometric shapes that almost resemble stars. Scholars debate whether these designs were purely ornamental or carried symbolic meaning. Some claim the stars represented the heavens, guiding travelers spiritually as the sun guided them physically. Others insist they were simply decorative. You reach out to touch the tiles, feeling the cool surface beneath your fingertips, connecting to the hands of artisans long gone. A pigeon flutters by, startled by your movement. Locals whisper that pigeons in old mosque courtyards carry prayers on their wings, traveling unseen through the night to fulfill divine purposes. Fringe belief suggests that if a pigeon lands on a prayer mat, it blesses the person who last knelt there. You chuckle quietly, remembering the cats of Al-Azhar. Cairo seems determined to involve animals in its sacred spaces. The sunlight of the past is hard to picture until you lean against a weathered stone pillar. Traders once leaned here as well, adjusting their robes and murmuring supplications. You almost hear the rustle of textiles, the whisper of coins, the soft murmur of prayers blending with commerce. The mosque, now silent, absorbed these moments, preserving them in the layers of dust and stone. You notice faint inscriptions above a doorway leading to a covered section of the courtyard. They are so worn that only fragments remain. Names of donors, blessings invoked, and perhaps a date of construction. Historians debate whether these inscriptions served purely legal purposes, to record donations, or were meant to inspire devotion. Either way, the fragments testify to the interconnectedness of faith, charity, and daily life. Finally, you take a moment to close your eyes. The courtyard feels alive with echoes of merchants pausing mid-step to pray, of students muttering verses under lantern light, of pigeons cooing in corners. The whispers of past devotion blend with the night air, and for a heartbeat, you are part of the rhythm. You step forward slowly, leaving behind the caravanserai prayers, carrying their lingering essence into the next alley and the next mosque, drawn ever deeper into Cairo's forgotten sanctuaries. The alley twists sharply, forcing you to duck under a low-hanging wooden beam, splintered and sagging from centuries of neglect. You step carefully, aware that one misstep could send your foot into a hidden pit or a loose stone. The air grows cooler, carrying a faint, musty scent, an aroma that whispers of time itself. Ahead, a narrow doorway leads into what appears to be another mosque, but smaller, almost secretive. This is the Mosque of the Lanterns, a modest structure tucked away behind leaning houses and stacked crates. Its minaret is low and squat, a squat sentinel watching over the alley rather than dominating the skyline. Legends claim that centuries ago, lamps inside the mosque burned continuously, fueled by oil blessed by a visiting Sufi mystic. Some fringe stories insist that the lamps were never extinguished, their light flickering faintly even today in the spirit realm. You smirk, thinking that a mosque with eternal lamps would make a terrible energy bill, but an excellent bedtime story. Historians still argue whether the Mosque of the Lantern served primarily as a community mosque or as a haven for travelers seeking refuge. Either way, its charm lies in its intimacy. You step inside, and the cool air wraps around you like a soft cloak. The mosque is small, its walls close, but every surface speaks of devotion. Carved calligraphy along the arches, faded murals depicting geometric patterns, and faint traces of painted verses that once glimmered in oil light. A stray pigeon flutters through a broken window, scattering dust motes like tiny shooting stars. Locals whisper that these birds are messengers, carrying prayers and secrets from the mosque to the wider world. Fringe tales go further. If you whisper your worries to a bird in a sacred mosque, it may carry them straight to Allah. You chuckle quietly, glancing at the pigeon perched high above. "Well, if you're listening," you murmur, "please deliver my gratitude for not pooping on me." The floor is uneven, strewn with fragments of tiles in muted blues and whites. You kneel to inspect them, noticing how centuries of footsteps have polished the surfaces until they shine faintly under the moonlight, streaming through the broken windows. You can almost hear the echoes of worshippers, soft whispers of *Subhanallah* and *Alhamdulillah* drifting through the space, mingling with the scent of sandalwood and the occasional trace of incense. A small wooden mihrab sits at the far end, modest but carefully carved. You brush your fingers along its edges, feeling the warmth of history seep into your skin. The inscriptions above it are faint, yet the words, "Guide us in patience and devotion," are still legible. Scholars debate whether these inscriptions were crafted by local artisans or influenced by designs from distant cities like Damascus or Baghdad. Either way, the words endure, patiently waiting for worshippers and wandering explorers like you. You stand near the doorway, peering out at the narrow alley beyond. The city feels quiet tonight, almost respectful of the hidden mosque. You pause to appreciate the stillness, realizing that in these forgotten corners, time bends differently. The world outside may rush and roar, but inside, centuries of devotion have left a calm, persistent hum. A stray breeze flows through the broken lattice windows, stirring dust and shifting shadows across the floor. You close your eyes, letting the faint light, the whisper of prayers, and the subtle hum of history wash over you. The mosque is alive in memory and spirit, a quiet testament to devotion that refuses to be erased. Stepping back into the alley, you leave the Mosque of the Lanterns behind. Its glow lingers in your mind, a reminder that even the smallest, most hidden mosques hold vast histories and quiet magic, waiting for those who are patient enough to notice. You continue down the twisting alley, the night air carrying a faint hint of jasmine mixed with the dust of centuries. The path opens slightly, revealing a cluster of half-ruined walls and toppled pillars, remnants of a mosque that few people even remember by name. The locals whisper of it as *al-Masjid al-Mudawwar*, the round mosque, though some say the name is more legend than fact. Historians still argue whether the circular design was intentional or simply the result of reconstruction over generations. Either way, the roundness gives the space an uncanny, almost hypnotic rhythm. Stepping inside, the courtyard is eerily quiet. Your footsteps echo softly against worn stone, blending with the subtle whisper of wind slipping through cracks in the walls. The round layout is intriguing. The prayer area seems to radiate outward from a central point, creating a natural focus for worshippers. Some scholars suggest that such designs were inspired by early Ottoman experimentation, while others argue it stems from local Egyptian architectural innovation. You glance up at the crumbling dome, imagining sunlight streaming through centuries ago, illuminating worshippers' faces with divine patterns. A faint legend floats through your mind, a tale that a jeweled talisman was once embedded at the center of the dome, glowing softly when the mosque was full of faithful. Fringe belief holds that the talisman could reveal the hidden intentions of anyone entering the mosque, though naturally, no one alive today has seen it. You smirk at the thought. Cairo has always enjoyed mixing devotion with a touch of mischief. The floor is strewn with broken tiles, their original colors muted but still hinting at delicate floral patterns. You crouch and trace one pattern with your fingertip, feeling the indentations and imagining the artisan centuries ago, painstakingly laying each piece. You remember reading that even minor mosques often employed skilled craftsmen, as every mosque was considered a canvas for devotion. The care in each stroke, each tile, speaks of patience and reverence, a quiet persistence that transcends time. A low archway leads to a smaller chamber at the edge of the mosque. You step inside, feeling the temperature drop slightly, a cool hush settling over the space. The walls are etched with faint calligraphy, and remnants of plaster hint at past ornamentation. Locals claim that if you close your eyes here and listen carefully, you can hear the faint hum of prayers from centuries past. Fringe stories suggest that the spirits of devoted imams linger, gently guiding anyone who enters toward reflection and calm. You chuckle softly, imagining a ghostly imam shaking his head at your noisy sneakers. Near the center of the chamber, a cracked stone fountain lies dormant. Its basin is lined with faint blue tiles, waterlogged, dried up, but still echoing past rituals of cleansing and purification. You kneel and run your fingers along the edge, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath your skin. The fountain's silence is almost deafening, yet somehow comforting, an enduring presence in a space otherwise surrendered to decay. The dome above is partially collapsed, revealing slivers of sky dotted with stars. You tilt your head back, letting the celestial glow mingle with the mosque's shadows. The geometry of the round walls draws your gaze naturally upward, reminding you that Islamic architecture often seeks to elevate the spirit, even in the smallest spaces. Historians still debate whether the round design influenced later mosque layouts in Cairo or remained a local curiosity, but you can't help feeling that the shape itself carries quiet wisdom. A sudden flutter alerts you. Pigeons descend from the rafters, wings brushing against cracked tiles. Locals believe these birds act as silent witnesses, carrying whispered prayers on their wings, a tradition rooted in centuries of folklore. You watch them settle, the gentle rustle echoing through the chamber, blending seamlessly with the hum of the night. You rise and step toward the doorway, pausing to look back at the round courtyard. There's a strange intimacy here, a connection between space, history, and devotion that feels almost palpable. The mosque's whispering presence seems to follow you as you continue down the alley, guiding you deeper into Cairo's hidden spiritual labyrinth. Even forgotten corners like this hold echoes of patience, artistry, and unwavering faith, waiting quietly for anyone willing to notice. The alley narrows once again, twisting unpredictably, forcing you to hug the walls as you move. Shadows stretch long and wavering across the stone, cast by the moon slipping through the gaps between leaning buildings. Ahead, you spot a faint shimmer, a tiny mosque, almost hidden behind stacked crates and hanging laundry. Locals refer to it as Al-Qaedar's hideaway asterisk, after the mysterious figure said to wander the streets of Cairo guiding the faithful. Fringe stories claim that if you step inside on a moonless night, the walls themselves whisper guidance to those who listen closely. You enter cautiously, the air noticeably cooler here. The mosque is small, no larger than a humble home, but every surface bears devotion. The walls are covered in faded murals of intertwining vines and floral patterns, worn almost smooth by the passage of time. Scholars debate whether these designs were purely decorative or if they symbolized the Garden of Paradise, a recurring motif in Islamic sacred art. Either way, their presence softens the austerity of the small prayer hall. In the center, a tiny mihrab is carved directly into the stone wall. Its edges are chipped, yet the shape remains unmistakable, pointing the faithful toward Mecca. You kneel, brushing your fingers across the carved edges, feeling centuries of hands that have done the same. The inscriptions above it read faintly, "Patience and guidance dwell with those who seek." Even in its humble state, the words feel deliberate, as if intentionally left for anyone who stumbles upon this forgotten space. A stray cat slips in through a broken window, its movements cautious but graceful. Local legend holds that cats entering sacred spaces are messengers of divine secrets, silently carrying prayers to unseen realms. Fringe tales suggest that observing their behavior could reveal hints about the future, or at least provide some subtle amusement. The cat curls up near the mihrab, seemingly satisfied with its choice of resting place, and you chuckle softly. Even in the quietest mosques, life asserts itself. The floor is uneven, patched with worn tiles and cracked stone. You trace a line along a faded geometric pattern, marveling at the skill of the artisan who laid them so long ago. Scholars argue whether these patterns are symbolic of celestial constellations or simply expressions of aesthetic harmony. Either way, they guide your eyes upward, drawing attention to the modest dome above. Above, the ceiling is simple, yet intricate in its design. Small wooden beams intersect in delicate latticework, letting in scattered moonlight. The effect is subtle but captivating, a gentle dance of light and shadow. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and old incense, reminding you that even in obscurity, this mosque was tended to with care and devotion. A soft breeze enters through a lattice window, stirring dust particles that glimmer like tiny stars in the dim light. You pause to breathe it in, allowing the serenity of the space to seep into your mind. The combination of silence, history, and subtle fragrances creates a meditative atmosphere, making it easy to forget the bustling city outside. Near the back wall, a small wooden door leans slightly ajar. Peering through, you glimpse a narrow passage leading to what might have been a madrasa or private study room. You imagine students of centuries past hunched over manuscripts, debating theology and memorizing Quranic verses, their voices soft yet full of passion. Historians still argue whether spaces like these influenced larger educational movements in Cairo or were simply pockets of localized learning. Finally, you rise and step toward the doorway, feeling the cool stone under your feet. The cat stretches and leaps through a hole in the wall, disappearing into the night. The mosque leaves behind an indelible impression, small, intimate, yet filled with echoes of devotion, whispers of guidance, and centuries of quiet persistence. You step back into the alley, ready to follow the trail of hidden sanctuaries deeper into Cairo's labyrinthine heart. The alleyway opens briefly into a small, sunken courtyard, its walls adorned with peeling plaster and faint remnants of painted calligraphy. You notice the faint scent of mint, mixed with the lingering aroma of incense, perhaps from a small shrine tucked in a corner. This is the Mosque of the Whispering Walls, a forgotten sanctuary whose name comes from a curious local legend. If you press your ear against the stone, you might hear fragments of prayers from centuries past. Fringe tales suggest that the walls even respond to sincere questions with subtle vibrations. You can't help smiling at the absurdity and beauty of the idea. Stepping inside, you immediately feel the cool embrace of shade. The prayer hall is small, roughly the size of a courtyard room in a traditional home. Yet the arches are delicately carved, each one telling a story in its gentle curvature. Historians still debate whether this mosque served primarily as a private space for scholars or as a community hub for locals too poor or too timid to enter larger congregational mosques. Either explanation fits the intimate atmosphere. The floor is layered with centuries of dust and small pieces of broken tile, patterned in muted blues and ochres. You kneel to examine a piece more closely, running your finger along the edges of a faded geometric motif. The artisan's skill is evident, even in decay. Some believe that such geometric patterns encode subtle spiritual messages, guiding the mind toward reflection and tranquility. Others argue they are simply ornamental, a testament to patience and craft. You choose to believe both. A small wooden minbar stands slightly off-center, leaning precariously against a cracked wall. The carvings along its edges are almost entirely faded, yet you can sense the care and devotion poured into every detail. This pulpit would have served countless imams over generations, delivering sermons that resonated with hope, warning, or encouragement. The air still hums faintly with echoes of those voices, though whether it is imagination or residual energy, you cannot tell. You notice faint inscriptions above a narrow window, names of donors, blessings, and dates lost to time. Some claim that recording donations in such visible places ensured divine favor, while fringe legends suggest that writing one's name in a sacred space guaranteed spiritual protection beyond death. You chuckle softly, brushing your fingertips along the worn letters, acknowledging that both explanations might carry truth. A stray bird flits across the courtyard and landing briefly atop a fallen column. Locals whisper that birds visiting abandoned mosques act as witnesses, carrying prayers and secrets into unseen realms. Fringe lore suggests that if a visitor whispers their concerns while a bird perches nearby, it may transport them directly to divine ears. You grin, imagining a sparrow dutifully ferrying your minor anxieties skyward. Above, a small dome peeks through the broken roof, its once ornate lattice now partially collapsed. Moonlight filters through, casting fragmented shadows across the courtyard. You trace the shapes with your eyes, imagining how sunlight might have poured in during the day, highlighting the delicate carvings of angels, vines, or abstract motifs. Scholars debate whether such patterns were designed purely for aesthetic pleasure or to inspire meditative thought. Either way, they succeed. The walls bear faint traces of frescoes, barely visible, but suggesting floral motifs, birds, and perhaps symbolic representations of paradise. You pause to admire the detail, considering the countless worshippers who once knelt here, their gazes lifted toward the heavens. The mosque feels alive in its silence, a patient guardian of centuries-long devotion. As you rise and step back toward the alley, a gentle breeze stirs, shifting dust and carrying the faint fragrance of mint and incense. The mosque leaves an impression of quiet persistence, an enduring whisper of devotion and artistry hidden in the labyrinth of Cairo's forgotten alleys. You continue forward, drawn by the promise of more unseen sanctuaries and stories waiting to be uncovered. The alley twists sharply, forcing you to duck under a low archway that looks almost like a collapsed roof. Beyond it, a faint glimmer of light spills from a partially open doorway, illuminating chipped stone steps leading down into a courtyard sunken below street level. You descend carefully, the air cooler here, tinged with the faint scent of damp stone and aged wood. This is the Mosque of Silent Lanterns, so named because lanterns once burned quietly through the night, casting light without drawing attention to the small sanctuary. The mosque is intimate, no larger than a typical home, but every surface radiates devotion. Faded calligraphy winds along the arches, and delicate geometric carvings hint at the hands of artisans who invested hours, even days, into patterns designed to inspire reflection. Scholars still debate whether these designs encoded spiritual guidance or simply celebrated symmetry and beauty. Either way, they succeed in drawing your gaze upward, encouraging contemplation. A small minbar leans against a wall, its carvings faint but still discernible. You brush away centuries of dust, revealing delicate inscriptions of Quranic verses. Imagine the imams who once ascended these steps, their voices carrying soft wisdom to a congregation of merchants, travelers, and local families. You can almost hear the quiet echo of prayers bouncing off the stone walls, blending with the scent of burnt incense that lingered long after worshippers departed. Fringe stories suggest that the lanterns themselves were enchanted, blessed to burn as long as devotion persisted in the alley. Some locals swear that even today, a faint glow appears if one visits at the quietest hour, though no one alive can confirm it. You laugh softly, imagining a tiny flame flickering centuries later just to greet a wandering explorer like you. The floor is uneven, patched with fragments of tile in muted blue and ochre, worn smooth by countless footsteps. You crouch, tracing the geometric patterns with your fingertips, appreciating the precision and care of the artisans. Some believe these patterns align with celestial constellations, while others insist they are purely decorative. Either explanation is magical in its own way. A breeze filters through a cracked window, stirring motes of dust that glimmer faintly like tiny stars. You close your eyes briefly, letting the tranquility seep into your mind. The mosque feels alive in its silence, a repository of centuries of whispered prayers, quiet devotion, and human persistence. Near the back wall, a small alcove once held offerings or books. The remnants of faded floral frescoes still cling to the surface, suggesting care and artistry even in modest spaces. You pause, imagining students and worshippers leaning against these walls, their eyes lifted toward the ceiling as they prayed, studied, or reflected. Finally, you step back toward the doorway, taking one last look at the interior. The Mosque of Silent Lanterns leaves behind a lingering impression. Devotion, layered over centuries, subtle artistry guiding the spirit, and a quiet sense of peace found only in hidden corners. You ascend the stone steps, returning to the alley with the weight of history softly pressing against your senses, ready for the next sanctuary yet to reveal itself. The alley twists again, narrower now, shadowed by leaning walls that nearly meet overhead. You pause, adjusting your pace as the uneven stones underfoot make each step deliberate. A faint glow ahead catches your eye, the entrance to a mosque that seems almost swallowed by the surrounding buildings. This is the Mosque of the Hidden Courtyard, a forgotten sanctuary whose walls have long been whispered about by locals for housing secret gardens and rare manuscripts. Fringe tales suggest that the courtyard holds a hidden spring that only reveals itself to those patient enough to explore the mosque fully. Stepping inside, the contrast is immediate. The air is cooler, carrying faint scents of mint and jasmine, remnants of a garden that once flourished within the walls. Scholars debate whether these gardens were purely decorative or served as spaces for meditation and study. Either way, the effect is profound. The mosque feels alive, a quiet oasis amid the winding, bustling streets of Cairo. The prayer hall is modest but elegant. Faded geometric patterns stretch across the walls, their colors muted by centuries of dust and sunlight. You crouch to examine one, tracing the lines with your fingertip. The precision is remarkable, a testament to the artisans who crafted these patterns long before modern tools existed. Some believe these motifs align with celestial bodies, guiding the mind toward reflection and spiritual contemplation. Others maintain they were aesthetic choices, though the beauty remains undeniable. At the center of the hall, a small mihrab indicates the direction of Mecca. Its edges are chipped, but the inscriptions above it, patience and devotion, bring clarity to the soul, remain legible. You kneel briefly, letting the words sink in, imagining the generations of worshippers who once did the same. Fringe legends claim that whispering a wish into a hidden corner of the mihrab ensures it reaches divine ears, though you suspect that such tales are part charm, part imagination. A low archway leads to a narrow courtyard, where fragments of faded tiles and broken columns hint at a garden once meticulously tended. The scent of dried herbs and flowers lingers faintly, weaving through the air like a memory. Local lore insists that if a visitor sits quietly in this courtyard at dusk, they can hear the soft rustle of leaves once whispered to by scholars and imams centuries ago. You pause, imagining that sound blending with the faint calls of night birds. The walls are lined with niches, once holding manuscripts, lanterns, or small devotional items. You peer inside one, finding nothing but dust. Yet you feel a connection to the hands that carefully placed objects there. The prayers recited in soft cadence, the devotion etched into every stone. Scholars still debate whether these niches were primarily practical or symbolic, but their enduring presence carries weight regardless. A gentle breeze flows through a broken lattice window, stirring tiny motes of dust that glint like starlight. You take a slow breath, letting the tranquility settle deep into your chest. The mosque feels timeless, a sanctuary of quiet persistence, tucked into the folds of Cairo's labyrinthine streets. Rising, you step back toward the alley, glancing once more at the hidden courtyard and the faint traces of its garden. The mosque leaves a lingering sense of wonder, a reminder that even the smallest, most obscure sanctuaries can hold layers of devotion, artistry, and quiet magic waiting to be discovered by those willing to notice. The alley stretches ahead, narrower than before, and you feel the walls almost breathing around you. Your footsteps echo faintly against the cobblestones, each step stirring centuries of dust. Ahead, tucked behind a stack of old barrels and faded laundry lines, is a small mosque with a collapsed minaret. Locals call it *al-Masjid al-Murtafi*, the lowered mosque, though the reason for its name has been lost to time. Fringe stories claim that those who enter the mosque during a full moon can hear the whispers of scholars debating hidden knowledge from centuries past. Inside, the air is noticeably cooler, and the faint smell of sandalwood and incense lingers. The prayer hall is modest, barely larger than a single room, yet every corner holds evidence of devotion. Carved wooden beams support the low ceiling, their edges worn smooth by time and touch. Historians still argue whether this mosque was originally part of a larger complex or always intended to be a private neighborhood sanctuary. Either way, its intimacy is undeniable. The floor is uneven, scattered with broken tiles and small stones. You crouch, brushing your fingers across a faded geometric pattern. The design is simple yet elegant, intertwining shapes that might represent stars, leaves, or purely artistic symmetry. Some scholars argue these patterns are metaphysical maps, guiding the faithful toward contemplation. Fringe beliefs claim that tracing them with your fingers can bring faint insights into personal challenges. You chuckle softly, imagining following the lines as a secret ritual. A small chipped mihrab indicates the direction of Mecca. You kneel briefly before it, feeling the weight of countless prayers that have been whispered in this tiny space. Above the mihrab, faint inscriptions read, "Seek patience, and your heart will find light." You imagine centuries of faithful following these words, quietly reflecting in this intimate sanctuary, far removed from Cairo's larger mosques and bustling streets. A narrow doorway leads to a tiny courtyard. Fragments of faded tiles glimmer faintly under moonlight, and broken columns hint at a structure that was once more elaborate. Fringe legend tells of a hidden well beneath the tiles, whose water blessed anyone who drank from it. You glance down at the cracked floor, half expecting to see it, but it is likely just another story layered onto the mosque's history. You notice faint traces of frescoes along the walls, flowers, vines, and abstract shapes, now softened by time, but still offering glimpses of the care invested in this modest space. Scholars debate whether these murals were purely decorative or intended to inspire meditation and reflection, but their presence adds a quiet grace. A breeze drifts in through a broken window, carrying the distant sounds of the city. Yet inside, the mosque remains a pocket of calm, almost frozen in time. You pause, letting the stillness and history wash over you, appreciating the delicate balance between decay and devotion, between forgotten space and preserved memory. Rising to leave, you glance back at the lowered mosque. It lingers in your mind, a testament to persistence, faith, and artistry. Though small and hidden, its echoes of devotion ripple through time, quietly reminding anyone willing to notice that even the most overlooked corners of Cairo hold sacred stories. The alley narrows further, the stones beneath your feet uneven and slick with centuries of dust and occasional moisture. Shadows press close from the leaning walls, but a faint glow ahead guides you. A small mosque almost swallowed by surrounding buildings. Locals call it *al-Masjid al-Qadim*, the ancient mosque, though its precise age is debated. Fringe stories claim that if you step inside at dawn, you might hear faint chanting from long-departed worshippers, echoing as if time itself bends within its walls. You step inside, immediately struck by the coolness and subtle scent of oud lingering in the air. The prayer hall is narrow but elegant, its arches delicately carved and walls faintly painted with geometric designs. Historians still argue whether these patterns were primarily spiritual guides, aesthetic choices, or coded teachings for initiates. Either way, the designs draw your gaze upward, encouraging reflection as your eyes trace the intricacies of ancient craftsmanship. A small mihrab sits modestly at the far wall. You kneel before it, feeling the worn stone beneath your fingertips and imagining generations of worshippers who have done the same. Above, faded inscriptions read, "Patience illuminates the soul, devotion anchors the heart." Fringe legends suggest that whispering your personal struggles into the niche can send them to the heavens, though you suspect it's more charming superstition than spiritual certainty. Still, the thought makes you smile. The floor is layered with broken tiles and fragments of stone, each piece a fragment of time. You crouch to examine the patterns more closely, tracing geometric lines with your fingertips. Some scholars believe the designs reflect celestial patterns, serving as meditative tools for worshippers. Others argue they were simply ornamental, but the careful precision of the work makes you lean toward the spiritual explanation. A narrow corridor leads to a sunken courtyard, where traces of a once lush garden remain. Small sprigs of resilient plants peek through cracks in the stone, as if the mosque itself refuses to let life vanish entirely. Legends say that the courtyard was once tended by a reclusive scholar who dedicated his life to prayer and teaching, leaving notes of wisdom buried beneath the soil. Fringe beliefs even claim the plants grow in the patterns of stars, a living map of divine design. The walls bear faint frescoes of vines and flowers, softened over centuries but still hinting at past beauty. You pause, imagining worshippers leaning against these walls, their eyes tracing the delicate lines as they prayed, studied, or meditated. The mosque feels alive with these residual echoes, a quiet testament to centuries of devotion. A gentle breeze stirs through broken lattice windows, shifting motes of dust into patterns that glint like tiny stars in the dim light. You close your eyes, allowing the serenity of the space to settle deep into your mind. The mosque feels timeless, a small sanctuary holding devotion, artistry, and spiritual persistence. Rising, you step back into the alley, leaving the ancient mosque behind. Its quiet presence lingers in your senses, a reminder that even the most hidden corners of Cairo's streets contain enduring stories, echoes of faith, and traces of artistry that refuse to vanish with time. The alley dips and twists, stones uneven beneath your feet as though daring you to misstep. A faint scent of jasmine drifts from behind a crumbling wall, mingling with the faint mustiness of centuries-old stone. Ahead, almost hidden by the shadows, is a mosque whose tiny minaret leans precariously, earning it the nickname *al-Masjid al-Ma'ashukyang, the Mosque of Lovers. Legends say it was built by a devoted couple, wealthy patrons who willed it as both a sanctuary and a symbol of their love. Fringe stories insist that couples who visit together may hear faint whispers of their future joys if they tread softly. Stepping inside, the space is surprisingly cool, a haven from the night air outside. The prayer hall is narrow, yet every surface conveys intention. Delicate arches, faded murals, and fragments of carved inscriptions. Historians still argue whether this mosque served primarily as a community hub or as a private sanctuary for the couple's extended family. Either way, the intimacy of the space is undeniable. A small mihrab, carved directly into the stone wall, marks the direction of Mecca. You trace the edges with your fingers, feeling the worn texture beneath your touch. Above, faint Arabic inscriptions remain. Love and devotion are paths to the divine. Fringe legend suggests that whispering a secret wish into the mihrab might carry it to unseen ears, though you smile at the thought and silently offer your own small gratitude instead. The floor is a patchwork of worn tiles, muted blues and earthy ochres that hint at former elegance. You crouch to follow a geometric pattern with your fingertips, imagining artisans laboring for days or weeks to craft designs that would endure for centuries. Scholars debate whether such patterns served as meditation aids or simply decoration, but the effect is undeniable. Your eyes naturally rise, drawn upward to the ceiling. Above, a collapsed dome allows moonlight to spill in, casting fragmented shadows across the floor. The interplay of light and shadow is almost hypnotic, a subtle dance that seems to echo the whispered prayers of past worshippers. Fringe tales even suggest that these shadows sometimes align in patterns, guiding faithful visitors to hidden messages or teachings. You shake your head, smiling at the thought, but secretly, it feels possible. A low archway leads to a small courtyard, where remnants of once lush gardens remain. Wild mint and thyme sprout stubbornly between the stones, a reminder that life persists even in forgotten corners. Local lore claims the garden was tended with prayers and devotion, and that each plant carries a blessing. You inhale deeply, savoring the faintly fragrant air and the sense of quiet continuity that surrounds you. The walls bear faint frescoes, flowers, abstract shapes, and perhaps symbolic representations of paradise. Their faded beauty hints at the care invested by worshippers and artisans alike. Scholars debate whether these murals were practical guides for meditation or aesthetic celebrations of divine creation, but the peaceful effect is undeniable. Rising, you step back toward the alley, leaving the Mosque of Lovers behind. Its quiet intimacy, subtle artistry, and lingering echoes of devotion press softly on your mind. Even in obscurity, love and faith combine to create a sanctuary that whispers across centuries, patiently waiting for those willing to notice. The alley bends sharply again, so narrow that the walls on either side nearly touch your shoulders. Moonlight filters through cracks above, casting a pale silver glow on the uneven cobblestones. Ahead, a faintly carved doorway reveals another hidden mosque, partially concealed by vines and creeping plants. Locals call it *al-Masjid al-Kashf*, the Mosque of Revelation, a name that hints at both spiritual insight and the unexpected discoveries that await wandering souls. Fringe legends insist that anyone who prays here at dawn might glimpse visions of the past or receive subtle guidance from unseen hands. Stepping inside, you immediately feel the difference. The air is cooler, carrying the scent of aged wood, incense, and faint traces of rosewater. The mosque is compact, no larger than a private study room, yet the artistry is exquisite. Geometric patterns stretch across the walls, almost hypnotic in their symmetry. Historians still debate whether the designs were intended as purely decorative or as meditative aids to elevate the soul during prayer. Either way, your eyes are irresistibly drawn upward. A small mihrab carved into the wall marks the direction of Mecca. Its edges are worn, yet the inscriptions above are faintly legible. Patience and reflection illuminate the heart. Fringe tales suggest that pressing your hand gently against the mihrab can carry whispered prayers directly to Allah. You smile softly at the thought, feeling a quiet connection to the countless worshippers who knelt here before you. The floor is uneven, scattered with fragments of tiles and worn stone. You crouch to trace a delicate geometric pattern with your fingertips, imagining the artisan's patience and devotion centuries ago. Some scholars argue that such patterns were inspired by celestial constellations subtly linking the mosque to the heavens. Others contend they were primarily ornamental. Either explanation feels sufficient as you let the design guide your gaze and thoughts upward. A narrow corridor leads to a sunken courtyard, overgrown with hardy herbs and small flowering plants. The air carries a whisper of life that contrasts with the stillness inside the prayer hall. Local lore claims the courtyard was once tended by a hermit scholar who spent his life in contemplation and teaching. Fringe stories suggest that the plants themselves hold subtle spiritual energy, flourishing only when visitors approach with reverence and humility. You kneel briefly, brushing your fingers along the stone and imagining the footsteps and prayers that have graced this space. The walls are adorned with faint frescoes, abstract patterns, vines, and delicate flowers, softened by time yet still hinting at the original splendor. You pause to reflect on the devotion required to create and maintain such beauty, marveling at the resilience of faith and artistry in even the smallest, most forgotten corners of Cairo. A soft breeze flows through a broken window, stirring dust motes that sparkle like tiny stars in the dim light. The mosque feels alive in its quiet persistence, holding echoes of prayers, whispered wisdom, and centuries of human devotion. Rising, you step back into the alley, carrying with you the lingering serenity of the Mosque of Revelation. Its presence a quiet reminder that hidden sanctuaries endure, waiting for those willing to notice and listen. The alley narrows further, twisting sharply and forcing you to press close to the walls as you move. Faint moonlight filters through cracks above, casting slender beams that dance across the cobblestones. Ahead, almost invisible behind an overgrown vine and crumbling plaster, is a mosque so small that it could easily be mistaken for a storage room. Locals call it *al-Masjid al-Sir*, the Mosque of Secrets. Legends claim it was a sanctuary for scholars and mystics who recorded hidden knowledge in manuscripts now lost to time. Fringe stories whisper that the walls themselves can murmur truths to those who enter with patience. Stepping inside, the coolness is immediate, carrying faint scents of aged wood, incense, and earth. The prayer hall is tiny, yet every surface is etched with devotion. Faded calligraphy traces the arches. Delicate geometric carvings trace the edges of niches, and remnants of painted murals hint at an ornate past. Scholars still argue whether this mosque was originally a private space or a modest neighborhood sanctuary, but the intimacy is undeniable. A small mihrab sits against the far wall, carved into stone and showing the gentle wear of centuries. You kneel before it, fingertips brushing the worn edges, feeling the weight of generations of worshippers who have come and gone. The inscription above reads, "Seek knowledge quietly, with devotion and patience." Fringe tales suggest that if you whisper your questions here, the walls may reveal hidden guidance. But you smile, imagining the walls politely ignoring trivial worries. The floor is a patchwork of broken tiles, uneven stones, and faded mosaic patterns. You crouch, tracing one pattern with your fingers, imagining the artisan who labored to craft these precise lines centuries ago. Some scholars believe the patterns align with celestial forms guiding contemplation, while others maintain they are purely ornamental. Either way, their effect is meditative, drawing your gaze upward toward the small, partially collapsed dome. Above, remnants of the dome let moonlight spill through broken latticework, casting fractured shadows that seem almost alive. The play of light and shadow is hypnotic, blending with the faint hum of the night and your own quiet breathing. Fringe legends insist that at certain times these shadows align to reveal hidden symbols. Though most dismiss such tales as fanciful, you can't help but appreciate the magic in the suggestion. A narrow courtyard at the rear of the mosque holds remnants of once-tended plants, their green sprigs resilient amid the cracked stones. Local lore claims that the garden was nurtured with prayers and devotion, and that any visitor approaching with reverence would feel a subtle sense of peace. You inhale the delicate scent of herbs and wildflowers, letting the serenity of the space settle into your mind. As you rise to leave, you pause for a final glance at the Mosque of Secrets. Its quiet presence, subtle artistry, and lingering whispers of devotion leave an imprint on your senses. Even hidden, forgotten spaces like this carry echoes of faith and human persistence, patiently waiting for those who wander far enough to notice. You step back into the alley, ready to follow the final trail of sanctuaries that Cairo holds in its labyrinthine streets. The alley finally opens into a wider street, the distant hum of Cairo's nightlife mixing with the whisper of wind through narrow lanes. Here stands the last hidden mosque of your journey. *Al-Masjid al-Nur*, the Mosque of Light, so named because even in ruin, it seems to catch and reflect whatever moonlight filters through the city's gaps. Fringe legends claim that the mosque's walls capture spiritual illumination, granting clarity to those who enter with patience and humility. Historians still argue whether this name refers to literal reflected light or a metaphor for divine guidance, but either interpretation feels fitting as you step forward. Inside, the mosque is compact but elegant, its walls lined with faint calligraphy that has survived centuries of neglect. The prayer hall, though small, conveys a surprising sense of expansiveness thanks to the delicate arches and partially intact dome overhead. You run your fingers along the worn inscriptions above the mihrab, reading softly, "Light your soul with patience, illuminate your heart with devotion." Fringe lore suggests that those who meditate here in silence may feel subtle warmth or a gentle energy in the chest. Though you smile at the thought, it feels possible nonetheless. The floor is uneven, patched with broken tiles in muted blues, ochres, and faded reds. You crouch, tracing the patterns, imagining artisans centuries ago painstakingly laying each tile as an act of devotion. Scholars debate whether these patterns were intended as meditative tools, maps of celestial bodies, or purely decorative works, yet their quiet beauty draws your gaze upward, guiding your thoughts toward reflection. A small minbar leans against the far wall, its carvings delicate despite age. You imagine imams ascending those steps, their voices carrying wisdom to small gatherings of worshippers, their words echoing softly against stone. The mosque's quiet intimacy allows you to feel connected to generations of devoted worshippers, their presence lingering like a gentle hum in the air. The dome above is partially collapsed, allowing slivers of moonlight to spill in. Dust motes float lazily in the beams, catching light like tiny stars suspended in motionless space. Fringe stories insist that the moonlight here aligns with certain inscriptions at specific times, revealing hidden wisdom or subtle patterns, though you suspect it's as much imagination as fact. Still, the effect is mesmerizing. A narrow courtyard lies beyond a low archway, its stones cracked and uneven but adorned with faintly surviving floral patterns. Hardy plants sprout between the cracks, resilient survivors in this forgotten space. Local legend claims that the courtyard's life is sustained by centuries of devotion, each prayer subtly nurturing its growth. You inhale the gentle fragrance of herbs and wildflowers, feeling a soft calm settle in your chest. As you rise to leave, you take one last glance at Al-Masjid Al-Nur. Its subtle light, quiet artistry, and enduring echoes of devotion linger in your senses. From the round mosque to the Mosque of Secrets, each hidden sanctuary has left its mark, reminding you that even forgotten corners of Cairo hold profound stories, whispered wisdom, and enduring faith. With a final deep breath, you step back into the night, carrying the serenity of these sanctuaries with you. You pause in the quiet street, letting the soft echoes of Cairo's hidden mosques settle into your mind. The night air carries a gentle chill, rustling the leaves and stirring tiny motes of dust that glimmer faintly in the pale moonlight. Each mosque you visited, from the round mosque to Al-Masjid Al-Nur, now exists as a gentle memory in your mind, their worn stones, faded frescoes, and whispered prayers weaving together into a tapestry of time and devotion. The city feels alive with history, yet simultaneously at peace, as though the streets themselves exhale softly under the starry sky. As you breathe slowly, imagine the faint hum of water in a forgotten fountain, its ripples long merged with the night's stillness. The wind drifts over collapsed domes and sunken courtyards, carrying with it the scent of mint, jasmine, sandalwood, and old incense, a perfume that lingers quietly, soothing your mind and soul. Allow the faintest memory of prayers whispered and sung over centuries to flow around you like a calm river, gentle yet persistent, reminding you of devotion's quiet power. Picture yourself resting near a courtyard garden, the moonlight spilling across resilient herbs and wildflowers that have survived neglect yet continue to thrive. Every breath you take mingles with the fragrant air, a reminder that even in forgotten corners, life endures with patience and grace. The mosque's arches, their worn tiles, their crumbling minbars all hold silent stories of hope, artistry, and spiritual reflection. You can feel the persistence of faith lingering in the air, a soft reassurance for anyone willing to notice. Slowly, let your thoughts drift like the desert wind, softening the edges of the day and inviting calm. Every whispered prayer, every delicate pattern, every flicker of moonlight is a gentle lullaby from centuries past. Feel your body relax, your mind quiet, and your heart settle into the soft cadence of history and devotion. The streets of Cairo, with their hidden mosques and secret courtyards, now exist in your memory as a serene, sacred landscape, ready to guide your dreams. Let the night embrace you, the cool breeze and starlit skies wrapping around you like a soft cloak. Your senses linger on the faint scents, the echo of prayers, and the gentle presence of places that have endured time's passage. Allow yourself to drift, calm and untroubled, as the gentle whispers of devotion and artistry carry you towards sleep, one serene breath at a time.